Wednesday, September 4th. Welcome back to the Damon Bruce Show, brought to you by Ike Sandwiches. And today we got a great special guest. It is football eve. Thursday night football officially gives us week one's official start. Tomorrow evening, the 49ers will wrap up week one on Monday Night Football. And let me tell you, when it comes to talking about the 49ers, Cam Inman and I have had many, many conversations. He has covered this team for a very, very long time. He has written a new book called The Franchise, and to discuss the franchise, one of my absolute favorites, a former weekly guest, has reappeared here on YouTube. Cam Inman, great to see you, brother. Happy football eve. How are you?
I'm doing great, but it's all of a sudden we're in week one. Like you said, football season starts tomorrow, and I just realized tonight is my neighborhood fantasy football draft, but it's also back to school night. And I only have, I think, 2 more of these back to school nights. This is the third and final kid. So I have a dilemma. Do I draft during the classroom visits? I'm not auto drafting, so I'm going to have to do that, I think.
Yeah, you can't auto draft. I'd rather you miss the draft than auto draft. Yeah, I think you can do it in your pocket. I think you are enough of a discreet phone user to get away with it.
The kids may not be able to use the phone in the classroom, but the parents can. Right?
Absolutely, as you should.
Okay, all right. Now I got my bearings. Now let's go NFL season. Let's talk some 49er football. What do we got?
Cam, it's great to see you, first of all. Man, it really is. And, you've been down around the team going through what has been a tumultuous offseason with the Brandon, Ayuk hold in, the Trent Williams hold out. Those 2 issues get put to bed right around the same time Ricky Pearsall is being shot in Union Square. This is an offseason that is unlike anything else the 49ers, I think, have ever been through.
Yeah, they're also coming off a Super Bowl loss. It's like, wait, oh yeah, that was 7 months ago. And then the Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk stuff played out, I think, as expected because they're both on the team still. There was so much talk that Brandon Ayuk wanted to go to Pittsburgh, or he's going to get shipped to Cleveland, maybe go to Washington with Jaden Daniels. And I insisted throughout the time, I go, it just doesn't make sense that the Niners would give up their number 1 wide receiver when you have a young quarterback who has an obvious connection. You don't want to get rid of that. So you're going to pay. And I think Brandon and I understood that too. So, but the path to get there was peculiar because Brandon Ayuk is a very low key, kind of happy-go-lucky, chill guy. And then the social media stuff that he put out throughout the summer, and he did a podcast that shed light on it where he said, this is kind of fun being in the limelight. And I'm like, oh boy, fun is not the word I would use. Right. He even essentially alluded to that yesterday saying, towards the end there, he probably took it a little too far, but he got paid. Trent Williams flies into town yesterday at 3:30 in the morning in San Jose, which I wonder if he's going to get another fine on top of that, because I don't think he can fly into San Jose that late or that early. And then the whole Ricky Pearsall thing, I think, threw everybody off. But the fact that he is healthy and alive is remarkable. And it really could be, it kind of wipes away all the drama from the offseason because you go, okay, all that was business, and now this is life and death, and now we rally around a teammate. And Damon, the first person I saw when I walked out through the gates onto the 49er practice field yesterday was Ricky Pearsall, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I did a double take, and I'm like, that's Kyle Shanahan. Is he really talking to Ricky Pearsall outside the weight room? And he was. I recorded about 2-second video just for proof for myself that it was Ricky, but I don't want to invade the privacy. I think everything is such a private matter where you want to respect his privacy and everything he's going through, but everything looks like it's fantastic. Like he's healing, and the team's rallying around him. So I think they're entering this week all of a sudden on a 100-degree turn, and everybody's upbeat and ready to go chase a Super Bowl.
We have our mutual pal Mike Silver describing it as bad vibes summer around the 49ers, and it really did feel like that for a handful of weeks, but what a 180. Everything is sort of turned around and right on time, and getting everyone in the final week to tune up for the New York Jets. We said to be taken seriously. To really be taken seriously, you got to have Trent. You got to have Brandon Ayuk. What is going on here? And I'm glad that we can take this team seriously now. I was talking to Larry Krueger about this. Let me ask you, Do you think that the 49ers have learned anything about the way that they do business that might change their approach differently going forward with the concept of fifth-year options and extensions?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there are any lessons learned in what was a painful, headachy offseason?
It's kind of funny, and I'm not going to be defending the 49ers, but I want people to kind of look at it on both sides. It takes two people to make a deal. And if I'm Brandon Ayuk, I don't want to make that deal in March because there's 6 other wide receivers that are going to get top of the market money. By waiting, he earned himself probably an extra couple $1 million. So if I was the 49ers, yeah, I would like to get the deal done back then, which you almost did. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown gets money and Ayuk backs off. Eventually he gets basically the same deal months later, but that's on him. And the Trent Williams stuff that's the nature of their business. Trent did not need training camp, that we believe. And I never got any sense of panic that there wasn't going to be a deal. They just knew it would eventually get done. The fact that it got done in week 1, it's like, oh, heaven forbid. Well, Nick Bosa did the same thing last year. So if you're Trent Williams, you're going, hey, this Bosa guy figured something out here. He broke the bank, didn't have to go to training camp, and he's ready to play in week 1. And so in terms of their business strategy, all this that we've gone through this offseason, it's done. It doesn't matter. And the bigger headache is going to come in about 6 months when Brock Purdy is eligible for his contract extension, where he's going to go from making $1 million a year. Hopefully he makes it through the season healthy and successful, and he doesn't have to just take every endorsement out there possible. By the way, he's a new endorser for Ariat, the cowboy boots and everything. That was today's, and yesterday's, I think, was Applebee's.
I saw him in an Applebee's commercial.
Yeah. So he's got, but Brock was great about this. And when started training camp, he goes, look, he's like, yeah, I don't make a lot of money, so I'm doing endorsements because it kind of costs a lot of money to have privacy. Where, maybe you're flying first class, you're taking you're taking the nice Uber. And now you think of holy cow, Ricky Pearsall just got shot. You really do need some privacy and security around you, especially if you're.
Oh, no.
Sorry about that.
Oh, there he is.
Phone call coming in.
That's all right.
Good. But I got you.
I got you.
Hello, hello.
We're good. I got you, Cam. Can you hear me still?
Hello, hello.
I hear you.
Let me leave and come back.
Okay. Cam Inman's going to leave and come on back here. And you know what? While that's happening, this is the absolute perfect time for me to tell everybody, Cam, have we got you back?
Am I back? Yes.
Cam is back with a vengeance, if you don't mind me saying.
Somebody was trying to call in. Let me put them on Do Not Disturb, and I'm back. All right. How's that? All good.
How dare they interrupt us? I mean, it's been a year since the two of us have talked. They're still trying to come between us, Cam. I can't believe these people. While you were going to dip away for a second, I was going to tell everybody about my sponsor, Ike of Ike Sandwiches. I mean, Cam, what do I have to do to put you in a Damon Bruce sandwich today at Ike's? It is steak.
It's wrong. I have an Ike's down the street in Pleasanton that they opened up about 2 years ago. So
it's time. Wonderful. It's time to get yourself to Ike's. By the way, Saturdays are for sandwiches at Ike's. Starting now, $3 off all sandwiches every Saturday between now and October 5th. So think of Ike's for lunch, think of Ike's for dinner, and if you think of Ike's on a Saturday, you can save $3 by using promo code SAT3, SAT3. You can either use that online on the Ike's app, or you can use it in person when you order. And I also know, Cam, you are a fan of going to a good Irish bar. The Dubliner in West Portal, those are my people. Those are my sponsors. I love the guys at the Dubliner. Whoa. Great bar. You got to like a bar that's got high school local football helmets in it, and the Dubliner has all that.
Outstanding. Is that right?
Yes, they got a lot of great high school football helmets at the Dubliner. And thanks to our sponsors and thanks to today's guest, Cam Inman, we will be doing some sponsorship for Cam. He has penned a phenomenal book about the 49ers, and we are talking about The Franchise Right Here and Now, which is the name of his book. We'll get to all that in a second. But Cam, here we are. 8th season for Kyle Shanahan. An alien lands on planet Earth, and it's up to you to describe Kyle Shanahan's tenure with the 49ers properly. What would you tell the alien?
I'd say he inherited a planet that was devoid of anybody, and all of a sudden they populated with the megastars. And they've gotten to the championship round repeatedly, year after year. But the major prize keeps you is elusive, even though they have leads at the end of these games. And they just got to break through. And he's not the first guy in NFL history that has struggled to break through. John Madden took a while until he won his first Super Bowl with the Raiders. Look at the guy that's two-time reigning champion right now. Andy Reid had his difficulties in Philadelphia, and now he's riding Patrick Mahomes to Super Bowl after Super Bowl. And I think the way it's set up is Kyle Shanahan knows football inside and out. The players respect and enjoy him. The ownership, the stability of the front office is great. So the planets are aligned, if you want to get back to your alien. It is aligned for them to continue to win a Super Bowl or chase Super Bowls, not only this year, but down the road. As long as Brock Purdy stays healthy, because you have a great supporting cast. And while you have that, you got to have some of these draft picks start panning out. This year's class looks pretty darn good. But by not having first-round picks the last few years, that's going to hurt them in the long run? Maybe. Because they never really built this roster around first-round picks other than Nick Bosa and Brandon Ayuk. And so right now, and it's like Ricky Pearsall, he's going to be a delayed entry into the NFL. But you have other guys. So the way it's structured really well, I appreciate it and I like it. I think the owners are very happy with it. Obviously, they're making money off of Levi Stadium. But Shanahan and Lynch seem to have a pretty darn good harmonious relationship working where each one knows their position.
It's amazing how much Brock Purdy has saved almost everyone's bacon because, as great as an in-game, day-of-game strategy thinker of football as Kyle is, the mistake that was Trey Lance is probably enough to get most people who make that mistake fired. Kyle has seen his way through it, thanks in a large part to how good he is at his job and the fact that, Brock Purdy walked in out of the ether to just be what Trey Lance was drafted to supposed to be. And it's just amazing how one draft pick was such a mistake, and then the other draft pick is one of the all-time, possibly NFL bullseyes ever hit.
And I will say, and Brock's very self-aware, so he knows he's surrounded by a great cast of talent. If you want to go back to, 2005, when the Niners had the number one pick, and Mike Nolan had his choice of Aaron Rodgers, who will be coming to Levi Stadium Monday night, or Alex Smith, and he went with Alex, and they kind of thought that was best for the state of the franchise because there wasn't much talent there for Alex. And that if Aaron came in, he would have imploded more and it just wouldn't have worked because he was too demanding. But obviously, I think that was the wrong choice. I love Alex Smith, but Aaron obviously looks like a transcendent quarterback. That can get you fired, right? And so the Trey Lance pick was really a gamble. I mean, it was almost like they had Jimmy Garoppolo had just gone to the Super Bowl, right? And it's kind of like, okay, they've had enough. Obviously, they traded so much to get up to number 3. And yet, was it going to be Mac Jones, with maybe Zach Wilson fall in their laps? I think what it is there's such a crapshoot when you're drafting a quarterback. I mean, Joe Montana was the last pick of the 3rd round, right? Bill Walsh did not know what he was doing. He should have taken him first round. And it just there's so many mistakes. It's like that whole draft class is terrible from 2021.
Yeah.
And so then you find the last pick of the 2022 draft, and voila, it's magic. It's kind of, I think that's part of the beauty of sports is the unpredictability nature of it. I mean, yeah, Nick Bosa was the number 2 overall pick. He's supposed to be Superman, and he kind of is. Kyler Murray was drafted ahead of him, and he's not Superman yet. But the Arizona Cardinals have to reinvest him because it was such a high pick.
It's one of my favorite Ralph Barbieri sayings was 2 things can be equally true, right? Mm-hmm. And to me, when I look at this front office and the job that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have done together, I think it's easy to accuse them of having a little bit of a blind spot in the draft, especially with their early and premium picks. But they've really saved their own bacon with mid-round and then Brock Purdy being Mr. Irrelevant. So there is clearly an issue in drafting, yet at the same time, they also have one of the deepest and most talented top-heavy rosters you're going to find in all of football. So which is it? Can you have a bad front office if you have as much talent as anybody in football, it's really weird to sort of tell you what the Niners are when it comes to player acquisition. There's elements that they're terrible at, but
Yeah,
they have totally nailed it on another level.
well, I think in the draft, as long as you're hitting a certain amount of guys, no matter what draft they're in. I mean, Kittle 5th round, Fred Warner 3rd round. A lot of their third rounders or in history did not pan out. This year, they have a third rounder that's going to be starting on the offensive line. And it's like, whoa, where did that come from? When they had the initial 53-man roster come out, I broke it down, and I believe it was about 28 guys were guys they drafted, right? And the rest were free agents. And you go, is that a bad ratio? And it's not. I think that's kind of normal in the NFL. And if it's way more drafted, that's kudos to you, but it's not necessarily the way it is. And so you have to complement your guys with free agents that hit, like Charvarius Ward hits. Leonard Floyd, they're banking on hitting the quarterback with Nick Bosa. And, the wide receivers are homegrown with Ayuk, Samuel, Juwan Jennings. They traded for McCaffrey. They traded for Trent Williams. So there's so many different ways to build a roster. And kind of the beauty of it is the Niners aren't stubborn enough to try all the different ways. And so that's why, some of the moves they've made are genius. I mean, getting McCaffrey and, paying him accordingly, and the fact that he stayed healthy is huge. I mean, he is the best offensive player in the National Football League that plays a skill position. Trent Williams is the best offensive player in the league, maybe the best overall player, because he plays left tackle better than anybody in the world. And it's such a valuable position to protect the best position in the world, which is quarterback.
It is a big season for the 49ers coming up. Obviously, the stakes couldn't be much higher. Everyone's got them winning all these games in Las Vegas, and they're the number one team on the board, and Pro Football Focus has them number one. Where do you think they really sit in the hierarchy of NFL teams right now? And if I had to ask you where the season ended, where would you say the destination is?
New Orleans is the destination. That's Super Bowl. And we all love a New Orleans trip, but here's my deal. I mean, essentially, they brought back the same offense, Damon, which was the number 2 most productive offense in franchise history in terms of points and yards and all that. So you got all those guys, and they have another year in the system. Defensively, they needed some work, and so they got rid of a few guys, including the defensive coordinator. So you you elevated a defensive coordinator that knows the system that you want to play, and then you helped him you brought in Brandon Staley to complement that, maybe add some wrinkles to it. Then you had a couple new guys on the defensive line, which was needed. Dre Greenlaw's not going to be around, so you got to cover for him. And so they brought in a veteran, Devondre Campbell. And I think I had my doubts early in training camp about him, or maybe early in spring. And then the more I talked to people, the more I watched him, it's like he hasn't lost a step as much as he knows what he needs to do. And that's really important. And, if you're playing next to Fred Warner, Fred's going to make sure things are in the right spot. So I think they still are superior talent-wise to anybody. A lot of people will say, but the NFC is catching up. I don't believe it. I look around at the other teams. The Detroit Lions have a very good team. The way they lost that NFC Championship game is crushing.
Yeah.
Obviously, losing a Super Bowl is crushing, but the fact that the Lions had such a big lead and fell flat on their face and had some bad coaching moves, that's really hard for them to readjust to. And there's still doubts about Jared Goff and it's Detroit. So you expect there's going to be a letdown. Maybe it was a flash in the pan. So Detroit's still there. Green Bay is kind of on the ascent because they have young offensive players, but they also have a quarterback that was throwing interceptions all around the playoffs that he can't do. You look at the NFC East, I just wiped that off the board. I think Philadelphia is still a mess. And, that they did bring in Vic Fangio to coach their defense. So that may help out the head coach in Philly.
Saquon Barkley. You're not in for Saquon Barkley. Oh, my goodness.
Saquon Barkley, he's also starting that Applebee's ad with Brock Purdy, by the way.
That's right. Dan Campbell's got a good turn in it. But
He does. I kind of like that. Jalen Hurts, though, when we went to Philadelphia last November, our Uber driver was just ripping Jalen Hurts. He's like, he's not a quarterback. He's a runner. He doesn't know what he's doing. He had no faith. And I just loved because the Philly people, they're just unvarnished truth. They're not going to defend their guys unless they really deserve it. So I have doubts about Philly still. And obviously, they lost Kelsey. They lost, I think, Brandon Graham. So they've lost some key guys. And then the NFC South is what it is. I think Atlanta will be better under Raheem Morris. And they got some good offensive talent there. But the NFC West, you go back and you go, all right, everybody thinks the Rams are up and coming. The Rams are coming after them. Well, Shanahan has owned the Rams, right? The Rams no longer have Aaron Donald, and Matthew Stafford's getting up there in age where they have to worry about who the backup is. And Jimmy G's the backup, but he can't play for a couple of games because he's suspended. And then Seattle's got a new coach, so it's kind of a wild card. They have really good wide receivers and defensive backs, right? And it's like, not sure their lines are very good. And I think that's football's in the trenches. So, and then Arizona to me is it's a perpetually bad franchise. No matter what players are on the roster, it's a toxic environment. Do not believe in the Arizona Cardinals. And so there you go. The Niners have the path right back to that number one seed. And it's a matter of whether they have Mahomes-proofed their roster. And that's why you better have better defensive backs and better pass rushers. And I'll say this, Damon, my biggest concern going into training camp still exists, and that is they do not have enough depth at defensive end. And we saw that in the preseason finale when Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos both went out with knee injuries, and Gross-Matos has not practiced since then. There's not depth there. And to get through 21 games, to make sure somebody's there to sack Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, you better have defensive ends. And are we, come October, is there going to be more trades? Like they had to go get Chase Young, they had to go get Randy Gregory. It's like, I guess that's what you do. It's like, obviously they know this too. So it's not like they're putting all their, eggs in their basket for Robert Beal. They knew Drake Jackson was not going to play this year. They knew that in January. And that move did not go through until training camp. So like they're shorted themselves at defensive end.
How are they going to get through that?
They have to pray they have to pray that Nick Bosa and Leonard Floyd stay healthy. And both of those guys are top tier defensive ends. Great guys to watch.
I'll tell you what, in terms of body types, is there any way that Malik Mustafa can put his hand in the ground? That guy looks like he can rush the passer. My God.
He is he's a little bolder, and he's a fun guy to talk to, but he's diminutive. He's a smaller guy. So it's going to be fun to see what are they going to do at safety? I mean, Jair Brown wants to take control and be a starting safety in the NFL. Great. So he's going to have to make plays, and he had an interception in the Super Bowl, kind of came on strong there late in his rookie year, but I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with Talanoa Hufanga. To me, it was a mild surprise that he made the 53-man roster and did not start on the PUP list, which would have ruled him out for 4 games. And that to me tells me, all right, well, they believe obviously he's playing the first 3 games. Could he play in the opener? He just returned to practice last week. We don't get to watch practices anymore, so we have no clue how much he's involved. But I will tell you, just watching him in 5 minutes of stretching yesterday, that's all we were allowed yesterday at this bonus practice, he looks like he's ready to go. And do you have to play it safe with him and not play him a lot because he's coming off of an ACL from November, December? But the fact that they cleared him to go into the season on the active roster tells me there might be a chance he plays week 1. How much? I don't know, but otherwise it's George Odom, who's more of a special teams guy, and the NFL's special teams have changed a ton this year. And then Mustafa is kind of like a little wild card of, obviously, he's making the roster, and he should contribute. He's a guy that could probably do some special teams and hit some guys out there.
We've talked about, this team's blind spots in the draft, early in the draft. I always thought that special teams kick and punt coverage has been a little bit of a blind spot. And the new wrinkle of this hybrid kickoff rule, some teams are going to attack it and embrace it and use it as a weapon. Other teams, I think, are going to be very conservative with it. I think Kyle Shanahan is going to tell Jake Moody to kick every single ball out of the back of the end zone. Let's not even fuck around. What do you think?
I agree. And he sarcastically joked that was the plan, but I don't see why you wouldn't do that if the ball comes out to the 30-yard line every time. I think the only time if you don't do it is if there's a chance that you could create a fumble on a return or something like it late in the game, right? It's going to be weird to see, but it is something to watch now. It's like now hey, the kickoff, something might happen. Maybe not. So.
By the way, we get some breaking news. G-Man Music says, I would see Cam on my garbage route out in Pleasanton. Couldn't be a nicer guy. Do you compost? Do you compost, Cam?
I do not compost, but I always respect our local servants. That is outstanding commentary. Thank you for your service.
There you go.
Yes, that's great.
If the garbage man likes you, you're good people.
That's
That's it.
cool. That might be
Absolutely.
the best compliment I've gotten all year. The garbage man.
100%. Thanks to G-Man Music for passing that along again.
I did go downtown today, but I wasn't really running. I was walking back to my car because we got a few pops at McKay's Pub downtown last night. So doing a little book signing down there. I was making some money and then made sure I didn't drive home.
Well, and we're going to talk to Cam about his book here in just a second. I want to get into it because I love the way that this book is formatted, the way that it's broken down. It's totally a page turner. We'll get into it in just a second so you can go out and meet Cam. Maybe he can sign it for you. Thanks so much for sending it to me. And I'm honored to be in the book. I got an acknowledgement at the end of the book. That's how long Cam and I have been talking football. I made the frickin' book. So I guess I'm part of the franchise now, too. The man who is definitely part of the franchise is the man who owns the franchise. And the two of us saw Jed York go from a new here, not really good at it, to evolving into what he is now, which I think is an owner who gets it, an owner who understands that he's not really meant to be seen or heard from until he is standing there picking up a Lombardi trophy where you say, thank you very much, and then you give it to your coach as soon as possible. I think Jed was a little famous hungry at the beginning of his domain over the 49ers, and he is dialed back in many ways. What do you think of the evolution of Jed York as an NFL owner?
I think he's the best movie he's ever made was hiring Kyle Shanahan, who then hired John Lynch to be his GM, because by doing that and putting your trust in those guys and them coming through in year 8 where there's no headaches, there's no noise, there's no leaks. They handle their business. He gives them basically the checkbook, right? Get the right players, go ahead and spend all you want. I mean, they're paying top tier money to about 8 guys, and you don't hear complaints from him saying, damn it, I spent all this money, you didn't give me a Lombardi. It's, I spent all this money, let's make sure we're still going after it next year. And they have again. I've had a good relationship with Jed for 25 years. I wouldn't say we're friends. I don't have his cell phone number. I don't text him. If I need to get a hold of him, I can. But he wants to stay in the background because he knows this is the best way forward is you have one voice, and that's pretty much Kyle Shanahan, except for the once a week when John Lynch goes on the airwaves and talks on the radio, which is still weird. Well, the media, the local media, we're not allowed to talk to the guy, but you can hear him on the radio. John's a wonderful guy. John's a great ambassador. I would vote for John Lynch for president if he was coming up here in 2 months. But those two guys know what they're doing and and relate so well to the players and the team and create this team chemistry where that's why the ownership is, this is what we've wanted. This is what everybody's told us we need to do. This is how we've seen other successful organizations do it. Whereas you look at the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones is dropping F-bombs telling everybody, don't tell me I should hire a general manager. I can do this better than anybody. That was Al Davis 20 years ago. And I wrote that story on Al saying, look, he and I had a good relationship for a couple of years, but they kept blowing up. And you kept making the wrong draft picks, and I'd be like, he needs to hire a general manager. And then like that was the end of that. So it's really hard to screw up an NFL team because you're making so much money no matter what you're doing. But the key thing is hiring the right people and then stepping back, and that's what the Yorks have done.
How much do you think the Jim Harbaugh disintegration to what seemed to be a high watermark affected the way Jed goes about his day? Is he stung by the end of the Harbaugh era? Are there any regrets there, or was getting rid of him secretly the right thing to do? Although at the time, it felt like the wrong thing to do, and it spiraled into the Tom Sula, Chip Kelly disaster.
I don't want to say it was the right thing to do because I thought Jim was a great coach, but he was such an abrasive coach. It was a lot of energy, right? To work, it was such a, I don't want to say combative working environment with Jed because I don't know that inner workings, but him and Trent Baalke did not work together. And Baalke, I think, basically overstayed his welcome and made too many wild draft picks on guys with torn ACLs. And that's why once Harbaugh left, the cupboard's bare. You know, Tom Sula inherits a team that's starting to fall apart. There was all these retirements. You know, all these guys retired real fast, and then like, by the time Chip came, there's nothing left except a Colin Kaepernick who has a bad shoulder and doesn't come in until about the 11th with 5-6 games to go in the season. But by then, the whole story on Colin Kaepernick is him kneeling. and it was just such a bizarre spectacle. And so to pull out of that tailspin and get Shanahan was like, holy cow, how'd they do that? But I mean, Harbaugh, when he came in 2011, he was getting a team kind of on the ascent, and then there was a lockout, so they had to recruit players and get them to trust in them, and they got some pretty darn good players. He kept Alex Smith around, and he has a great nature about himself his first year somewhere where people buy in because it's about the team. It's us against the world. And that's why I think the Chargers are going to do well because of this. But if Joey Bosa and Justin Herbert are not healthy, do not hold me to that.
Like all conversations basically around the 49ers, the conversation begins with quarterbacks. Your book begins with quarterbacks. Joe Montana, and then you start getting into them and ranking them, and you know, you got appreciation for Jeff Garcia, who's sort of the lost really good quarterback in conversations of good Niner quarterbacks. And then there's, you know, we were just talking about him, this very sticky situation that Colin Kaepernick presented. I mean, he looked like he was going to be the future of all NFL quarterbacks. There was some excellent play. Then it disintegrated. Then it went wonky. Then it turned into something that wasn't even football at all. We were both there, you know, in front of all of it. We had a front row seat to this entire thing that we look back on it now. When we were going through it in real time, it was insane. Looking back on it, it was kind of nuts. I'm guessing that was maybe one of the more difficult chapters to work around and deal with and sort of explain as you were talking about the history of the franchise.
Yeah, because I mean, Colin was such a unique player where he burst on the scene and nobody knew how to defend him because he could run so fast and he threw the ball 200 miles an hour. And he succeeded to the point where he got into the Super Bowl and played well for a couple years. But by the time his career essentially was done, the NFL had caught up to him, learned how to defend him. The talent around him wasn't nearly as any good. And the stat line would just like he had like people like to cite his stats for his last year. We had a really good touchdown to interception ratio, but after halftime, he was terrible. It was like the adjustments defenses would make, and obviously the Niners were a terrible team too. So
there was a game in Chicago that he played where it was like, oh no, all the wheels have come off. Everyone's figured it out.
That was, you know what? Because that was the road trip where they played in Miami, and then they had a layover at the University of Central Florida in Orlando where it was 100 degrees with like 80%, 90% humidity, and then they go to Chicago where it's snowing. It's like, well, that didn't make much sense, and it was abysmal. But so my chapter on Kaepernick was what I tried to do in the book was find something that I knew how I'm going to remember that person or something besides all the controversy and the antics of whatever. You know, he used to have a golf tournament out in Modesto for kids, and this was very humble back in those days. And it was just neat to see him relate to these kids and just wanting to do stuff for society. And it was kind of like there was no racial overtones, anything like that. It was about doing it for the greater good of people. And I try to weave that into other things he did. So, but he was absolutely had to be one of the top 3 most polarizing athletes I've ever covered because you had to take a stance whether you liked him or not. And as a reporter, and I still believe this, even though reporting and journalism's changed a lot in my 25 years covering the team, I still just want to present the facts, like be fair and balanced and objective, and then let you decide. I was at an event, it was kind of like a political thing, and somebody said, oh, you covered the Niners, what'd you think of Kaepernick? That was terrible. I go, my job wasn't to tell you whether it was terrible. My job was to tell you what he was doing, and you could decide for yourself whether it was bad or good. I go, there was some stuff he did that I agree with. There was some stuff he did that I disagreed with. But it wasn't my place to tell you what I felt. My job as a reporter was to relay the facts so you can make your own decisions.
Again, you've been covering this team so very, very well for the better part of 2 decades as you researched the curated history of the San Francisco 49ers. Is there anything that you stumbled across that surprised you or stopped you and thought, I didn't think this was going to be a part of the book, but this absolutely needs to be a part of the book?
Yeah, a couple of them, because like there was, so like you're right, I did quarterbacks, I did coaches, I did legends, Super Bowls, draft picks, trades, free agents, stadiums. And so some of it is from interviews of 20 years ago or so. Some of it was from interviews 5 months ago. And some of it was reaching back out to guys I used to cover, like Joe Staley. And I'd asked Joe to help me out about what it was like losing the first 2 Super Bowls. And he shared with me that for years after that first Super Bowl loss, he tormented himself privately because Frank Gore had that long run towards the end of the first Super Bowl against Baltimore where he may have scored and then like he got pushed out of bounds at the 11-yard line or something. And Joe said the guy that was like closing in on him was the guy I initially blocked, and if I finished my block, Frank may have scored. And Joe kept that privately to himself. And then he kind of like, it took him years to realize that no, Frank was going to get pushed out of bounds no matter what. But and then the other Super Bowl, he didn't sleep the whole week because he had a neck injury and he just could not fall asleep. And so he was staying there for the national anthem, and Rockets red glare, and it woke him up because he almost fell asleep during the anthem. And he was just hoping to God he didn't like get the quarterback, get Jimmy killed or whatever, and he didn't. But the game didn't go their way anyhow. So little things like that. Mariucci's great. Like I've known, like Mooch was the first coach I really covered, and in those days it was open access. You stay out of practice as long as you want, talk to players, assistant coaches, and you learned. I mean, our whole process is we want to be taught stuff so we can tell the readers what's going on. It's not necessarily get the inside information. It's here's what's going on, here's why it's going on, here's what they want to do. And Mariucci and his staff, Greg Knapp, Jim Mora, somebody good, Dan Quinn was on that staff. They like really helped teach me football. And so when I was talking to Mooch for like the chapter, maybe it was on him, and he said, we were talking about the big playoff win over Green Bay or the New York Giants to come back. And he goes, Cam, he goes, that locker room at Candlestick was bedlam. It was amazing to be in there. There was so much excitement. Everybody's so happy. And that's the last time I was ever at Candlestick Park because they went to Tampa Bay the next week. They lost. He got fired. And I'm like, oh, like you can go, that is pro sports. You are at the highest of highest thing, and you are the king of the world. Week and a half later, you're fired. Thanks for coming.
So do you think he got let go because he was no longer the right guy for the job, or was he being measured against the two hardest ghosts in franchise history to chase, Bill Walsh, and you know, it feels like he was being measured against something that was really hard for anyone to wrap their arms around. Like, oh, Bill Walsh gave it to Seifert, just kept on winning. Give it to Mariucci, just keep on winning. Nothing, you know, the dynasty never stops for no one, and that's really not how sports works. I think that Mariucci was one of those, like, don't mistake this guy's kindness for weakness, and that did him in a little bit.
Well, he could be very serious when he needed to be. Like he could be very jovial also. I mean, when the TO stuff was going on in 2000, it was like Mooch would want to lighten the mood, but it was such a serious situation where T.O. started hating him, and you could just see this feud breaking out. And like, oh my gosh! And then his like dealings with Terry Donahue was just. I think it got to the point where it's like, okay, they sided with Terry Donahue rather than Mariucci, and Mooch had been around for a few years and hadn't delivered enough. And like they wanted him to make some changes on his coaching staff, and he's very loyal. It's his staff. He's not going to fire guys that he doesn't want fired. And you know, the end of the season didn't go the way it should have, and so out he went. Was not a great firing. The Yorks they admit that, like they didn't fire him the right way, and then off he went to Detroit. And that's pro sports. It happened. Like he had a pretty darn long tenure. What did he go, about 7 years or so? That's pretty darn good considering after that almost every coach was fired every 2 years or 2.5 years or 1 year, and now you have Shanahan in year 8. And my chapter on Shanahan, not to diverge much, but what struck me was he's such a great teacher and likes to like teach players and us, and he's transparent to that where he tells you how the wheels are supposed to work on the car, and you go, oh, that's kind of neat to know. And that's why I would talk to players during the season about stuff, and even after that Philadelphia game where they scored touchdowns, I think on 6 straight possessions. Kyle Juszczyk was telling me for the book, he goes, you know, after that game, you'd think Kyle would be doing victory laps in the film rooms, how good he was. He said first thing he was pointing out these calls that he missed that he should not have made because that could have destroyed things. And he said it showed us he was taking accountability for his errors even when we were doing well, and that meant a lot to the players.
By the way, this is brought up by a longtime viewer, True Blue Forever. He says Singletary doesn't get an era. No, probably not an era, but how do you incorporate Singletary into this?
The Singletary era, and obviously there's some classic viral quotes forever, right? I want winners and all this. he was very passionate about being a champion. It just never came to be. And, here's a guy that came in and replaced Mike Nolan, who was the one that hired him. And there was this different aura about Mike Singletary. He was a rock star, Damon. Remember, like, I think it was the end of the '09 season or whatever, and everybody just like circled around him in the end zone. I think it was before like maybe he was just getting the head job officially after he had the interim post. And there would be like swarms of fans on the field, and he'd be signing autographs. I had never seen this in my life where a coach is signing autographs or like taking pictures with people before a game. And I'm looking at a security guy. He goes,
Not a lot of coaches are Hall of Fame players, though.
no, you're right. But I'm like, what in the world is going on here? But that was part of Singletary. Singletary wanted that. He wanted people to know he was a superstar. I'm going to lead. And only I can lead this team to the championship. And he gets fired. And the next year I get a hold of him because he was coaching, I think, on the Viking staff. And I remember he calls me back and I'm on the Niners practice field where you're not supposed to talk on the phone.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I got Mike Singletary here. I'm going to go off to the side. And I remember what his quote was, yeah, I'm still going to be the best head coach of all time. And I'm like, what? I'm like, wow. I mean, just the stones on this guy thinking I can do it. I mean, that's the Hall of Fame linebacker mentality. And
I believe he was dismissed from the high school team that he was coaching.
Yeah, right. And so, yeah, there's issues.
Look, I grew up.
But hey, he was at the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame a year ago, and because he was introducing Patrick Willis, and so I caught back up with him, and he's still the same guy. I mean, like he will fight for his guys, and he wants to be seen as a great visionary and a great man. I mean, he's a great man, so don't get that. But
I need winners.
He's not going to be the greatest coach of all time.
He will not be the greatest coach of all time. He's still one of the great linebackers. He's got some of the greatest eye sockets in the history of the NFL. There's no doubt about that. When he was the head coach, he was one of my favorite players ever. And when he was the head coach of the 49ers, I would have to do the postgame show, and it was like ripping Santa Claus. Like it was.
Watch film. Gotta watch the film.
It hurt. Got to watch that film. I love your way. I love the way you formatted this book. Again, it's a real page turner. Each chapter pulls you into the next chapter, and it just keeps on going and going and going. You did an excellent job with it. What was your favorite interview that you did for this book?
Well, my favorite interview of all time was when I sat with Al Davis for 3 hours. It was about 15 years ago, maybe. And it was supposed to be about John Madden, and then it went into so many different. That's the one where he, like, after that interview, a couple of weeks later, he asked how my mother was and all this.
Yes.
But he told me so much stuff in that, Damon, where I was able to use it in this book. Where and somebody was telling me this the other day. There was a chapter. This Larry Krieger was saying this was my chapter on like some of the best trades they ever made starts with Fred Dean's trade, and Al Davis essentially says that trade saved Bill Walsh's ass because Walsh was 11-26 to that point. And then they trade for Fred Dean. And Al said, I wanted Fred Dean. I wanted to trade for him. And the Chargers wouldn't take my offer. And so they took the Niners offer. Fred Dean goes and saves Bill's butt. And then they become Super Bowl champions. And it's like, well, you haven't heard that from the Niners side before because it's Al Davis's side of the story. And it's fascinating because Al also had a key role in getting the DeBarlos to buy the franchise back in the day. So there was stuff in there that I was able to pull from my interviews with Al. From like the favorite people I've ever interviewed were Al Davis, John Madden. John and I had a special relationship for a lot of years, so I had some stuff from John that I was able to get in the book, including stuff on Frank Gore. And Gore and Kittle did the forwards, which was really nice of them. But Steve Young, and I always appreciate anytime people take the time to talk to you, to teach you, and tell you some insights, as you do now on your show, right? And so if you don't take it for granted, you really appreciate it. You can find some treasures in there.
Well, there's an awful lot of knowledge. There's so many great stories in this book. It is the franchise, the curated history of the faithful by our guest today here, Cam Inman. The link to get this book on Amazon is in the description of this live stream. So you just go down right below where Cam and I are talking. You can just click and order this book off of Amazon right now. And I hope you got your planner out here. I hope you got your calendar in front of you. Cam, you got some local book signings coming up. People want to know where they can come out and see you. Is Cam doing any book signings? Rocking New Air 84?
I am. The first official book signing is going to be in Pleasanton at Town Center Books. It's my local bookstore. That'll be on the 28th. It's a happy hour. I think at 5 p.m. on a Saturday. The Niners are playing on the Sunday.
Ooh, books and
Um,
booze.
what's that? Yeah, it
Books
was
and
your
booze.
recommendation, so I liked it. I'll be doing stuff probably at some other places around town. There's other bookstores that are in the works. I know there's one in Fremont I'm doing in October. I'll post that stuff on my social media. We're on Twitter at Cam Inman, but I'm a lot on Instagram at 49ers.cam. I'm posting some shorts on YouTube, but I'm not in that YouTube game of your world yet. But so there'll be stuff out there, and then there's like some, like, it's kind of neat because there's a couple breweries that want to have me out and just like do signings where it's just kind of low key and maybe you can talk football. So I am open to doing that stuff. If there's a barbershop out there, I'm a big barbershop fan. We can do little barbershops. I want to do something different
You
and
got
get
good
out in
hair,
the
Inman.
community.
You got good hair for a writer. You really do.
Well, hey, the other thing that I wanted to do, and this is how I started pitching the book about a few weeks ago, and I reached out to my publisher. I go, I want to do something where I can help support high school football programs. And so if there's programs out there that can buy like a bulk order, I think a bulk order is like 20 books, they can get it for half the price. So say the book's $28, you pay 14 and you sell it to your, boosters or whatever for 20 bucks or 25 or 28, whatever you want, you make money. Maybe that goes towards equipment. And so my publisher was on board with that. So that's why I tell anybody, if you're associated with a high school football program, whether you're a coach, a booster, anybody, kid on the team, reach out to me directly or reach out to Triumph Books. And that way we can get something going so we can benefit high school football programs.
Sounds good to me, Cam. You're a good man. Thank you for giving back. You have always been incredibly generous with your time with me. You've always been a fabulous guest. You are as in lockstep with the 49ers as anybody who covers this team. And I wish you all the success in the world with this book. I think it's going to be a monster for you. And as good as the season goes for the 49ers, I hope your sales go through the roof and everyone is buying this to prepare for a Super Bowl in New Orleans, my man. Thank you so much for stopping by today, and best of luck with everything, brother.
Love it. Yeah. Maybe we'll do a book signing in New Orleans, either at Coach Sean Butcher or John Lafitte's blacksmith shop. How's that?
Sounds good. What I like is that there's no actual light. It's just all candlelit in the black.
You do know. Yes, that's exactly right.
Hell yeah, baby. Cam, thank you so very much.
All right. Good.
There
Thanks,
he is.
Damon.
Cam Inman, the best. One of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet covering sports. He's a hell of a writer. The book, I mean it. If you are a 49ers fan, it's fabulous. It is a fabulous book. There's not a lot that anybody can tell me about the 49ers in the last 20 years I've been here. And there is something that I learned on every page of this book about the 49ers. Cam has got it all formatted in a way that just makes it fantastic. I recommend that you buy that book right there. Again, I recommend that you go out and you get an Ike's on any day of the week, but I need to let you know that Ike's on Saturdays between now and October 5th is offering $3 off all sandwiches. SAT3 is the promo code when ordering online or in person. You mention it in store to redeem as well. The offer is only available on Saturdays, but you can save $3 per sandwich. Ike's on a Saturday. Get yourself to the Dubliner. Get yourself to the bookstore or Amazon.com. Who goes to bookstores anymore, right? Get yourself a copy of The Franchise by my man Cam Inman right there. Thanks to him for coming on by. And look, how do we wrap up this show? We wrap up this show by letting you know we got some history to go over. A little today in history. Thanks so much to Cam for stopping on by. Little today in history, September 4th. A very busy day in history. Very busy day in the history of sports as well. On September 4th, 1994, Fox NFL Sunday took the air for the very first time. There are two things that help establish Fox as America's fourth network. It was The Simpsons and it was the NFL. When Fox came in and outbid NBC for the NFL, it changed TV forever. The Simpsons, the Tracy Ullman Show, and the NFL put Fox on the map. September 4th, 2007, Boomer and Carton launched mornings on WFAN. They took over for Don Imus, who was one of those New York radio legends. Boomer Esiason has now been on in mornings on WFAN, I think, for 18 years now. So that has been a big moment in football radio media when there used to be a thing called radio. We got some birthdays. Well, one big birthday anyway. Happy 43rd birthday to Beyonce. Oh my goodness. It's Beyonce's birthday. She was born September 4th, 1981. So there you go. Hopefully the 49ers are putting a ring on it at the end of this year. On the other side of the spectrum of talent, I guess, I don't want to say, this is rough. Kelly Clarkson. Well, Kelly Clarkson can sing. She's not Beyonce, but Kelly Clarkson can sing. And today in 2002, she was named the first ever American Idol. There you go. Kelly Clarkson. Big day for her. 2002 on September 4th, 1994. Also helping Fox as a network, right? Today in 1917, Henry Ford was born. He built cars. He invented the assembly line. Henry Ford. Part of America. Some good, some bad from Henry Ford. Let's see. Maybe in the single most relevant to you and me in the times we're living in event that happened today, September 4th, 1998, Google was formally established by Sergey Brin and Larry Page. I mean, that's the freaking internet, basically, right? I mean, I know that there was a lot of internet before Google, but there is the internet pre-Google and post-Google are two totally different worlds, and Google is one of the ultimate game changers in the history of American thinkery, communication. How did you research something or did you just Google it? Google, born today, September 4th, 1998, and we have 2 deaths that happened on today. Today in 2014, Joan Rivers passed away. Joan Rivers is one of the funniest human beings to ever been born. She was vicious. She was mean. She was hysterical. I love Joan Rivers. I'm a Joan Rivers guy. I was a Joan Rivers guy. I know she went all like fashionista at the very end. And it's kind of where, but Joan Rivers was hysterical. Hysterical. One of my favorite Joan Rivers stories. This isn't a story you really tell on for a lot of people, but here you go. Joan Rivers was supposed to do an interview on the windows of the World, which was the restaurant atop the Twin Towers. And Joan Rivers was supposed to be like going to a Windows of the World restaurant interview on September 12th. September 11th happens. She contacts the person who set up the interview. This is the day after September 11th. And like just the vicious comedian's mind is always looking for the joke in anything and everything. Joan Rivers sent the person who was supposed to interview her an email that basically read, "So are we still meeting at Windows on the Ground?" Fucking Joan Rivers. I mean, come on. That's too soon? Yeah. But that is just the mind of a comedian. Unbelievable. And finally, and this one hurt. This one hurt because he was one of my favorite guys. Today in 2006, we lost Steve Irwin. He was killed by a venomous bull stingray. Crikey, Steve Irwin. Like, I love animals. Steve Irwin was one of my favorite animal guys of all time. It was the dude from the Columbus Zoo who used to be on with Johnny Carson. Rest in peace. Rest in peace to Steve Irwin. And there you go. Thank you so much for coming on by today. Thanks so much to Cam Inman for joining us. Thanks to Ikes. Thanks to my guys at the Dubliner. And thanks to all of you for being here. I hope you hit like and subscribe. We are, of course, going to be live all season long at the 2-minute warning of every 49er game. Wake Up with Damon and Larry is about to be the biggest morning show in the Bay Area. That's going to happen 3 times a week. We go live at 11 Monday through Friday. And thank you so much for being a part of it. Like and subscribe, my good people. You are the best. I thank you. Thanks to Cam. And please do remember that sports don't build character, they reveal it. And like that, he's gone.